Um, Thank you everyone for coming here for this workshop. We really appreciate it. Without hackers or people like you, this kind of event is probably not very successful. So would like to appreciate everyone from our team. So a little bit about me. I am the tech lead at KrawlCat. I am also the author of ERC1973, which is a standard on scalability, a layer 2 scalability for the Ethereum network. And right now, most of my work is kind of focused on building decentralized ecosystems. A little bit about my journey to give you like from where I have been and where I am today. So in 2016, I started as more like a crypto writer. So I wrote a lot of articles on early Bitcoin, Ethereum, as well as a lot of white papers during that time. Then in 2017, I was actually a volunteer here in East Waterloo. I couldn't get in as a hacker, so I started volunteering, and that's how I got here. At that time, I built a lot of ICOs. I got a chance to work with some thought leaders in the community at that point. I worked with the creator of ERC20 token, building some early ERC725 research on identity and reputation systems. But then I didn't work a lot on that area and moved on to being a full-time blockchain developer at the company I am here today. I architect a lot of different applications for smart contracts, for decentralized Oracle systems. And then this year, I pushed boundaries of innovation with our company and put forward the 1973 ERC standard, which is part of a component here that you guys will try to hack around with it. And now I kind of focus on building decentralized ecosystems. So a little bit about very short kind of introductory things for our projects that are behind this workshop. So DNA is it's a Metaverse dual chain network, which is a UTXO based chain with a proof of work and proof of stake architecture consensus mechanism that enforces innovative concepts like digital identities, assets, avatars, kind of something that you guys will be working with. KrawlCat is more like a generalized oracle, similar to Chainlink, that brings data from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 and facilitates interoperability along with providing real-world data to the blockchain network. Again, the ERC1973 standard is a layer 2 scalability that helps you kind of build decentralized applications without hitting the block gas limit. So it helps you distribute rewards to tens and thousands of participants without, without running a for loop or getting into a situation where you hit the block gas limit and you're kind of stuck with it, right? So the goals of this challenge is quite simple. Your task is to achieve interoperability, which is like communication between two closed networks, right? It's one of the pressing issues along with scalability and decentralization in the blockchain industry. So if you kind of feel ambitious, so feel free to go with it. So for the hackathon judging matrix, you have 5 factors, right? You have technical, original, ambitious, design, UI, and wow factor. Probably this would most likely fit into something like original and ambitious. Original because it's one of the key pressing problems in the blockchain ecosystem, right? And ambitious because it's a little tricky to understand both the protocols and kind of figure out how you can navigate to it. The price is 2K Canadian worth of DNA tokens, which could be traded at an exchange later on. But make sure your team at least have some experience with Solidity or JavaScript Web3, otherwise you might find yourself stuck a little bit, especially with JavaScript and Web3. So if we go to the ideal solution, this is what it's kind of going to look like. You're going to facilitate cross communication between these two closed protocols, and most of the code base is kind of going to look like server-side code base with Web3 JSON objects. You can run a Node.js server, kind of account management, right? So Metaverse is more like a Bitcoin-based chain, right? So it has UTXOs. And Ethereum is, we know, it's externally owned accounts. And you won't really direct with any, the smart contract that you will interact with is the ERC1973, so you can just call the public functions and you'll be fine. So here we are. So your task is, again, to achieve interoperability. And let me go to the repo here to kind of guide you guys into a step-by-step process. So this is the repo, so it's kind of in dev post. Feel free to go from there, and if not, you can just check the link here. It's ETH Waterloo task. So your architecture is pretty simple. So here so this is the Metaverse Explorer, right? So we have the UTXO base chain here. So you pick an address here, and there are concepts of avatars and certificates that that you guys can mostly read into these two articles. They're very well written. So then you can just check, okay, here we have avatar, right? So we have avatar here, and then we can paste the addresses here. Let me put it here. Yeah. So then you get this nice little link here, right? You get this nice little. So as you can see, it's like a JSON object, right? So now you have these corresponding, maybe we can go to a JSON formatter. Okay. Yeah, so here. So as you can see from this JSON object, you can find this address, right, which is the Metaverse address, and then you can see some more information from it. There's an original address, this is the issued transaction, and there's a symbol, which is somebody's name that they kind of assigned to this avatar. So again, you can see this address is this symbol here and the original address. So using this API Explorer, you can choose to go, you can figure out if you want to work with avatars, or you can work with certificates, or you can even work with raw transactional data if you want. And from these addresses, right, so you pick these addresses from the Metaverse chain, and then with the help of a Web3 library, you're going to create corresponding Ethereum accounts. So for example, this address will be corresponding, you can run this function, create accounts Web3, right? So yeah, maybe it's one of the Stack Overflow answers or something, right? Maybe not this one. But we can just go to the library. So here you can just use this function in your Node.js server and create corresponding Ethereum addresses, and then they will be mapped to these addresses, right? And once these are created, you can store in a data structure like hash map or arrays or whatever you like. And then you can start working with the ERC1973 contract here. So ideally, if you have to complete the task, it's very simple. You can just whitelist your addresses into this function, add minters. That's kind of the basic thing. But if you want to get more creative after that, right, you want to do, I think that's where the crux of the task lies in. How can you get more creative in creating crypto economic environments? Will you be able to create some form of incentives for the participants of the addresses? Some things like could be, I think I put in some examples here. Okay, here. So for example, you could create environments like where so I guess I'll give an explanation of ERC1973 a little bit before that. So ERC1973, what it lets you do is that you can register any externally owned accounts, right, your Ethereum addresses, and any of these participants can trigger the contract and bring rewards into the economy. For example, I think this is the best way to understand it here. So here. So if you look at this Robson transaction here, right? So what happens here, if you can notice that at the first transaction, you had two participants in the network, right? You had two participants in the network. So when there are two participants in the network and one of them wants to withdraw after some time, he gets 65 divided by 2, which is 32.5, equally divided, right? And then at this point, when the contract was triggered again, there were, so one block is equal to one token. You can think of it this way. So 101 at this point means that there are 101 blocks passed from the last trigger point. So at this point, you have 4 participants in the network. So if somebody had withdrawn their rewards at that point, it would be 25.25, right? 101 divided by 4. The last withdrawal is the first guy who was registered here, right? So it's 32.5 plus 25.25, which is 57.5. So that's what kind of this ERC1973 lets you do. It lets you build scalable, decentralized applications. So that's where one of the areas you guys can think of more creative ways to do it, right? So going back to the task here, right? So here we are. Yeah. So for example, you guys created these corresponding accounts, right? And then you whitelisted these Ethereum addresses on your Node.js server, right? And after you whitelisted and with different triggers, you could have certain business cases where you can say, okay, you know what, each one Ethereum token would be equivalent to 10 tokens in the Metaverse chain. Or you can do another interesting things like, okay, with different digital avatars, right? Each one of them, you can think of them as like 721. Each one could represent something of more value. Or if you work with certificates or identity areas, it would be something like, okay, you know, if you're a domain name certificate holder, you get more kind of token value, but if you're less in the hierarchical chain or less authority chain, you get kind of a less token value, right? So that's kind of creative things that is up to you guys on what you do. On a basic level, all you need to do is create the corresponding accounts and trigger this specific function in the smart contract, which is, where are we? Which is add miners. Here you will put your Ethereum address and then it's mostly whitelisted. But after that, what you do with it, it's up to your creativity. And I think that's one of the criteria where we will use to judge this. Yeah, but I think that's kind of short and sweet on this. If I'll be more than happy to take any questions or anything that I need to repeat for any one of you. Any questions? Nope. It was a lot. Yeah. I was told that I should speak a little slower as well, but I could repeat any areas that you would like. So I think like in short, this is kind of your. I can put the link to the presentation as well in the GitHub repo, but this is kind of the short thing that you guys can think of. UTXO-based chain, where you have these JSON APIs, right? And then you have the Ethereum chain, which is like the smart contract here. And in the middle, you have the areas that you work with, Web3, server-side, key management. Cool. We are in Discord, which is our, let's see, Discord channels. So I'll post the presentation in Discord here. So this is our channel, Metaverse DNA and KrawlCat. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions if you guys have, or just ping me directly from here. Cool. That's all. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the hackathon.